I have a very practical view of what technologies can or cannot do. I've been selling technologies for over 20 years, and I'm a kind of a Luddite. I don't really believe too much in what technologies can make things possible. I think we ascribe a lot of values to technologies, but as we go on in my presentation, I believe that there are certain central issues or challenges that we need to address in every form of engagement, and technology is just one of the pieces of that process of engagement. But more importantly, I believe that if we look at today's world as we see it, I primarily see a ripple effect. So the first thing we need to do is to get connected, whether we are connecting in the physical world or we are connecting in the cyberspace. And this connectivity is in terms of the networks, social networks. I come from a developing country, so for me, internet is not available to everyone. There are about 15 million broadband users in India compared to 1.2 billion population. That's not too much. We do talk about 900 million mobile users, but only about 300 million are in rural areas. So there is a big gap in terms of connectivity. So there is physical connectivity. Then you need to connect onto cyberspace and create groups. And then there is connectivity around ideas. So the first drop that creates the ripple is the connectivity, the physical connectivity, the virtual connectivity, and the connectivity of ideas. The bigger the drop, hopefully the bigger the ripple. Second is, actually this should be the other way around, is the ability to create community. We have a lot of ideas, we have connectivity, but we are not always able to create communities around it. Unless you can create a community around it, the idea does not travel further. And finally, the ability to collaborate and take the idea forward and actually make a difference. And I will take this into a couple of examples that I will take in my next slide on where it seems to work and where it seemed to fail. And there is one interesting example I have where it worked in one place but failed completely in another place. It's the same set of people who are running the idea, but we don't know what happened. So, right. Just to look at a couple of examples, and I'm bringing examples from the way government is using the social media, the way citizens and the NGOs are using social media, and where public at large is using social media. I have not included businesses in this because the examples of businesses using social media for now in India is very focused on increasing their brand presence and brand value. They're not yet creating or touching with the grassroots movement on ground, so I've left them out. So just want to use 3 examples here. First is the targeted public distribution system. It started in a very small province called Chhattisgarh. It's a heavily forested province. About 85% of the state is covered with dense forest. So connectivity, physical connectivity is a problem. About 90% of population is tribal, so they live in very small communities. And the public distribution system in India is perhaps the largest anywhere across the world, where food grain is provided to below poverty line families. And we have about, I don't know, about half the population that's covered by this public distribution system. What they essentially did, it's a very opaque system. Right? So you get your ration card, you go to a ration shop, and the man says, well, nothing has arrived, so I can't give you anything. The fact is that he sold off all that ration in black market and made money. Right? So essentially what they did was, from the procurement of grain to distribution of grain, they made the data available online. And as the people who have mobile phones could register their mobile phone, and every time the grain moved from the main distribution warehouse to your fair price shop, you knew it's left Raipur, it's going to reach Bilaspur in 3 hours, it's got so many kilos of rice, so many kilos of wheat, so many kilos of millet. They digitized the ration card holders, so they knew what the offtake would be like, and they were able to prevent a lot of rent seeking through the system, it also enabled people to question the government, saying, well, you said the ration went, but it never came. So please tell us what happened to it. So it was done really effectively in one province, and now it's being implemented across the country. The point here is that this was done as an end-to-end solution, from procurement of grains to distribution of grains. Many states have done this partially, right? So wherever they have done this partially, it hasn't worked. So it works for the government because they're looking at their own backends, making it more efficient, but if it doesn't make a difference to people's life, then they're not really interested in what you're doing. The second example, which is very interesting from my perspective, is this: reporting on corruption and rent seeking. There are two specific movements in India right now. They are there in the paper. One is called IPaidAbribe.com. It's been started by an NGO working in Bangalore, which has been active in grassroots level movement for donkeys of years now, many, many years. And they're very active, they're very well respected. They work with local governments a lot, the municipal corporation, to clean it up and work. And so they started this. So we have a lot of people reporting big bribes, small bribes. I haven't seen the impact of somebody saying I paid a bribe. So others would say, what's the big deal? We all know we all pay bribes. The other movement there is People for in India, People for Democracy, I think it's called. It's very interesting because it started with fasting of one old man. I don't know how many of you were following what was happening in India last year in August. We have this really old Gandhian, about 80 years old. His name is Anna Hazare. He is well known across the world for transforming one village, Ralegaon Siddhi. It's become self-sustainable from a village that was known for alcoholism, for theft, for dacoity, into a self-sustaining environment, basically. So he's very well respected. And he's been crusading against corruption for many years now, many, many years. And he's been demanding what is known as a Lokpal bill. Essentially, the demand is to ensure that corruption at the first level of entry where people come to seek public services, there is accountability there. He has a view of how it can be done, which is debatable. But the interesting bit was that he went on fast in Delhi. And there were about 100,000 people in one place supporting him. These are young, middle-class professionals who do not vote, primarily urban people. They do not talk to government. They're not interested in what people are doing, but they were there every single day. And the way they harnessed the movement was they used social media. So they have a fantastic Facebook presence, which has about 500,000 likes. They use a technology of call back. So you register your mobile, and every time a new protest movement is being designed, the location is sent to you on your mobile phone, and people gather. And in August and September, people gathered in about 20 cities across India. This has never happened before, barring what Gandhi did for us. Okay, so the government was rattled. I mean, rattled beyond words. I cannot tell you how bad it was. Seriously, right? So they finally managed to get him off fast, saying, yes, we will introduce the bill in Parliament. That was August. The bill has still not been passed. Okay. Obviously, the man was disappointed, took his next protest to Bombay, right, which is the financial capital of the country. And he could not even muster 10,000 supporters there. Same technology, same set of people driving it, hopefully same set of values, shared cultural values. Couldn't do a thing. What went wrong? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, right? But there is something that I'll come to in my next slide, which I do believe was the reason, was the core why it didn't happen. So when we do talk about technologies, we do talk about social media, we need to know that it's only a very small part of engagement. And what I would like to say here is I was fortunate enough to organize the last WIT4 in Delhi. We had the CEO of a very well-respected social media company on one of our panel discussions. And he said, when I do analysis of social media, there are only about 5 to 7% people who actually originate a conversation. There are next 10 to 15% who retweet, forward, share, and there are about 80% people out there who do nothing. They are passive consumers. So all this value that we ascribe to participation, being able to change things, people going out there wanting to do something about it, probably is not that true. You know, and the graph that Anders showed of the people on this part, where we say that they are concerned but they are not involved, how to engage with them, I think that would be the biggest challenge. But that challenge exists whether you use social media or not, right? And everybody who's come here and spoken so far has talked about the question of trust. I had a very small conversation over lunch when I was in Ireland, and these are people who engage with government. And the persons I was speaking to, they said, well, by the time the government comes to me and says, well, I want to consult on something, I get a feeling they've already made up their minds. You know? So why should I engage with them? Not happy doing it, no matter which technology they use. Second is the issue around political reluctance. It's very prominent in India. I don't know if it's here as well, is that if the government in question belongs to a particular political party and I go there and engage with them, I may be seen as supporting their ideas, right? So a congressperson will not necessarily engage with the BJP person, so on and so forth. The third is limited capacity to engage and lack of commitment. And I would like to put these two together, bringing back to the Bombay example. It's a question I asked on my Facebook, and I got some really strange responses. I said, why would you want things to change in 2 months if they haven't changed in 60 years? Right? Corruption hasn't changed in 60 years, and suddenly you think Lokpal bill is going to change everything. And everybody said, but we've been waiting for 60 years. Yeah, what have you been doing about it? So you can go out there and protest for 2 months. I mean, Gandhi had to protest for 30 years before we got our independence. Are you willing to make that commitment? Do you have the capacity to engage long term? And policy making is a long term process. And that's something, whenever we talk to citizens out there, is something that we grapple with. I mean, when I go out there and do impact assessment studies, it's very well for me to sit next to a person and say, can you fill a 3-page form? But if I say, well, over next 3 months, this is what I want to do, they immediately say, I don't have the time to do this. Right? So that is a really big question. And again, coming from India perspective, for us, exclusion is really big. All policy making is done in English, sitting in government offices, where people who are already marginalized will never get a toehold, ever. Right? So how do you include them in? We claim that the technologies enable us to do that because they can supposedly use their mobile phones, get online, yeah. But the fact is that most technologies, social media platform, the interaction again is in English. It's not in Indian languages. The mobile phones, some phones support Indian languages, the others don't. Just to give you an idea of complexity, we have 22 official languages and about 1,600 recognized dialects. 1,600. Right? And yes. And so yes, and so far Indian languages for some reason have been able to resist successfully conversion into computer languages. So we can't automatically translate from one language to another language. Machine translation for us is still a very big issue. Google seems to be doing a better job than Indian government is on the translation bit, but we are getting there. But so for us, these are the main issues, and to me, these issues are not related to just E. These are primary issues related to engagement itself. And just wanted to address one issue that Valerie brought up about privacy being contextual. I disagree. I hear this in India every single day. Oh, people don't get food to eat, so what's the big deal if we have their data? It is a big deal if you have their data, you just haven't asked them. You know? So it's something that comes up again and again. I'm really scared about the Big Brother's watching you phenomena, and something that I was discussing with Jeremy earlier. We no longer have a choice in the so-called e-society. We are being forced into it, and when we talk about e-society and technologies, we tend to sometimes forget that ICTs include radio, includes television. It's been there for donkeys of years, and every time a new technology comes up, we say, oh, it's going to bring in a new revolution. First 10, 15 years, possibly it does, then it gets taken over by corporates, governments. Look at Facebook, it's a big corporate. It's not a big e-society where free ideas float. So yes, I do agree, they help us do some things, but the primary challenges remain the same. And before I go out there and jump into that social media world and say fantastic stuff and let's all get involved, I would say take a step back, because there are some other very real issues that we need to deal with. So thank you.